begging for what you want and need, and start creating healthy, loving relationships, reducing drama and conflict, and living your most authentic life instead. There is a better way. In this step-by-step Take No Shit workshop, you'll learn how to stop constantly fighting for what you want and need in your relationships and let go of the fear of rejection. If you're ready to leave those unhealthy patterns of behavior that have affected your life and your relationships for years behind, take the first step. Welcome to Take No Shit, presented by Curiouser.life.
Okay, hello. Take 3 of having a backbone can be anxiety inducing. I'm going to give everyone just a few moments to, sort of work their way in here, and then we are going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, what the heck? Okay, come on. Do the thing. This happened earlier. Okay. I don't know what's going on. One more. Okay. Show for hide. Whoops. Dang it. What the heck? Okay. This is, whoops. Yes. Okay. We got this. We're going to go this. Say something.
Muted. Hi.
Oh. Yes. Okay. And you're not crackly?
Okay.
Okay, everyone. Have we got you? We all good?
I'm good.
Any of you hear any crackling?
Hello, it's Betty. Woo. How am I sounding? I think we're good.
So what's great about this is I have never had any technical issues quite like this before, like ever in my history of everything. So, yeah.
Hey, we live and we learn, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's start back with, so let's start with, how long have you had anxiety?
Ooh, so how long have I had anxiety? I was diagnosed in 2016, but I started feeling the symptoms that I expressed to the doctor when I was diagnosed for probably about a year before that. So probably my anxiety developed somewhere around 2014, 2015. I was in a relationship at that point that I really thought was going to be like the relationship. Like it was going to be the one I was going to be in for the rest of my life. And it was a polyamorous relationship, but the person I was in a relationship with had never done poly before. And so there was a lot of teaching on my part when it came to what is this supposed to look like and how do you navigate these feelings and how do you behave and things like this. And so I coupled a very, very, very high learning curve for my partner with my own, my own past and my own trauma around relationships and things like that. And it was just not a good mixture. at all. And it ended up creating this just wire crossing in my brain. And I became super anxious. I was actually having panic attacks, and I didn't know what they were because they didn't look like what they look like on TV. Like, I didn't need a bag to breathe into, and I didn't feel like I was having a heart attack. My panic attacks, yeah, no, my panic attacks are very different. I describe them when people ask me what they feel like. I tell them, you know, those horror movies where you see the protagonist like hiding in the closet, and they can hear the serial killer coming up the stairs, and they're trying not to breathe because they want to be absolutely still and silent, and they don't want to touch anything because they don't. That's what it feels like. It's absolutely terrifying. My entire body goes cold. Like, if you touch me, my skin is cold, and I'm just terrified. It is absolute irrational terror that something bad is going to happen. And I was having these attacks more and more and more when I would talk to my partner about, you know, things that weren't going well in our relationship, or things that I wasn't happy about, or things like this. And I was like, this is not okay. I shouldn't feel like this. And so, as compounded with my depression, I put myself in the hospital because I wasn't feeling safe around myself. And so I took a week, like 5 days, and I was in the hospital, and I was talking to doctors and doing group therapy. And I was like, they were like, this is anxiety. Like, that's what this is. You're having anxiety attacks. And I was like, but I don't have anxiety. Like, I'm just depressed. And they're like, no, nope. You have anxiety. That is definitely a thing you have. And I was like,
You get a twofer.
Yay. So yeah, that was sort of a realization for me, like, wow, okay. Cause I don't know why, but up until that point, I was mistakenly believed that, like, your mental illnesses or your mental health was kind of static. Like, it
Oh,
started
sure.
when you were younger, and like, that's what it is. And so I was like, I have depression. And they're like, well, now you got anxiety too. Have a happy day. Um, so yeah, it just sort of shifted my entire worldview of like, well, how do I move through the world now? I don't, okay, this will be fun. So yeah.
Mental disorders, collect them all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's collect the
Yeah.
full set. Like, there
So
we go.
for those of you here, don't forget, comment, ask your questions in chat. I'll keep an eye on the scroll so that if you ask anything of me or Miss Betty, we will, be on top of that. So do you remember, like, the first moment when you felt what you now recognize as anxiety? Do you remember, like, not it doesn't have to be specifics, but do you remember what was happening? What really just sort of like ding?
Yes. So I was at my house. My partner and I at the time did not live together. He lived in the Raleigh area, and I lived in the Greensboro area. And I was at my house, and we were having our nightly phone call, and I just got a flashback. Anyway, we were having a conversation about things we had planned to do that upcoming weekend. And these were plans that we'd had for, about a month. I was planning on coming up to his house, and we were going to go to a party or something that was happening that weekend. And we were going to spend the weekend together. And he goes, well, so my other partner actually wants me to go over to her house and spend the weekend with her because we haven't gotten to spend a whole lot of time together recently. And my whole body went cold because I was just like, wait, why? Like, but we had these plans, and you and I have talked about this, and we've been excited about doing this. And now all of a sudden you're just switching things up without asking, and you're choosing your other partner over me. And like, it was just this absolute, and I remember telling him, because I got real quiet, and he was like, are you okay? And I remember telling him, no, I don't think I am. Like, I feel terrified right now. Like, I'm genuinely scared right now, and I don't know what's happening. And he tried his best to be like, oh no, it's not a big deal. Like we could still hang out. She wanted it. And so he backtracked, and I was like, that's not helping the situation any. Like, I need you to stop talking. I need to get off this phone call because there's something happening and I don't know what it is. And I don't think talking to you right now is going to make this any better. So we did. We ended the phone call, and I told him I would give him a call the next day. And I remember just sitting in my room going, what is wrong with me? Like, I am not in any danger. There's no one here to get me. Like, I went outside, I smoked a cigarette, I like tried to calm myself down. I had no idea what was wrong. I felt like I was going crazy. I was like, am I one of those like crazy women that you see in the movies where people like just lock her away because she's not living in reality anymore? That's what it felt like. I just felt so crazy. It was awful. It was awful.
So it's interesting because I wrote about something that I experienced when something like that happens, because I think, like you, I'm a planner. I like planning things. I like knowing what's going to happen, which is probably for anxious people, a lovely thing, knowing what's going to happen. I've not been diagnosed for, let me be clear, I've not been diagnosed with anxiety. I don't feel I actually have anxiety. I would say though that I like planning. It's a lovely thing. There are so many parts of me that just rely on knowing what's going to happen in big ways so that the small things don't ever bother me. And I wrote about that, especially when it comes to non-monogamy, the change, right? Even when it's not like a bad change or whatever, it's just the change. My brain will like do like the blue screen of death, or it'll start like spinning, like looking for the file that doesn't exist for just a few moments, and then all of a sudden, like, it's almost like I can feel it click into place, and I'm like, okay, now I can move forward. I can, like, does not compute, wait, we had plans, does not compute. Okay, plans are changing. Got it. Right. And so I know that even I have that pause. Whereas with you, that pause was obviously, an entire horror film of its own. I'm relating to that. I'm like, ooh, yeah. Because
well, yeah,
when that happens.
So that anxiety was triggered by what my brain was interpreting as a rejection. It was triggered by, I don't want to spend time with you. I'd rather spend time with my other partner.
Sure.
And there was a whole, slew of baggage and stuff that had happened before that. I know that for some people that's like, but you're poly, like that's a thing. Like, why was this an issue? And I really don't have time to go into the plethora of things that led up to that particular conversation, eliciting that particular response. But it was that fear of rejection. It was that fear of, oh, so this is ending now. You're choosing your other partner over me. You no longer are in this relationship with me the way I am with you. I'm being rejected. And that's sort of where that anxiety sprang from. And so as I moved forward, that relationship did eventually end. Actually, about 5 months after I was diagnosed, that relationship ended. And when that relationship ended, it caused a very large shift in my life. And I realized that my anxiety, even though it was a fresh diagnosis, it was taking over my life. Because I had no skills. I had no coping mechanisms. I had no, any way to figure out how to even deal with this. And so I did the only thing I could think of to do, which was run away. And I did. I left North Carolina. I got a job in Florida, and I moved down here almost 7 years ago. And because I had to get away. I couldn't function in that space anymore. Every time I saw a picture, went to an event, saw the name pop up in my feed or in a a party I was going to, it was instant panic attack, instant, like, I can't function, I can't breathe, I can't be in this space anymore. And so, yeah, that was really, really like life altering for me to realize that now my brain has the ability to make me unable to do things I've always done. And it was devastating and, yeah, just altering in ways I did not expect. But it's also created some good change while we're at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the thing that I'm seeing there is that not only did you then have anxiety, but then it's like the anxiety fed upon itself and created a maelstrom of
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. It was because I'd never had anxiety. And even though I was diagnosed, I didn't have a therapist at the time. And so I didn't actually have a mental health professional I could talk to and be like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know, it's like
Uh-huh.
somebody gives you a brand new puppy and just says, hey, have a good day. I don't know anything about puppies. I have to feed it. What am I supposed to feed it? What does it eat? I don't understand. Like, what do you mean I have to take it outside? Why? I don't, what is happening right now? So yeah, I got handed this diagnosis with no coping skills and no like fallback to like, well, this is what you know, here's what you're experiencing. So when I came down here, I figured if I could just distance myself from the situation that would help. It did not. Um, and so I came down here and almost immediately got into a relationship with somebody who was really bad for me. Um, but it was the first step, I think the first concrete step I can see where I started realizing that my anxiety was keeping me from creating boundaries in my life because I was so worried about being rejected that I was actively avoiding hard conversations and bringing up things that would be conflict in my relationships because I was afraid they were going to leave me. I was afraid that was going to be it, that they were going to say, well, you know, you're just, you know, too much. You just want too much and you just go away. Like, I don't love you anymore. And so, ooh, yeah. So that first relationship here in Florida, um, ended very badly, but it ended because I put my foot down and I said, you don't get to treat me this way. You don't get to say one thing and then 3 weeks later turn around and say something different. No, get out. Grab your boots and get out of my house. And that was a big step for me. There was only one relationship in my whole life before that that I had voluntarily ended. Every relationship I'd ever been in had been ended by my partner for whatever reason, whatever happened. So learning to stand up for myself, learning that I have enough self-worth that I am allowed to set boundaries in my own life and say, this is how you will treat me, and this is how you won't treat me, and this is what I will do if you don't do these things. Um, it was a long road, and it's been, I think, going on 4 solid years of therapy with an amazing therapist. I love him. We actually talked about this interview yesterday. I was like, so what do I say when she asks me about this? But because he's been there for a lot of this and he's been there to like give me those little like, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to say that. So yeah, the anxiety kept me from saying things and doing things that were for my own self-interest because I was so worried about being rejected and being let go and now I'm not desirable anymore because of whatever. And so I had to go into this really dark place where I realized I wasn't happy with how I was being treated and how my partners were behaving around me and to me and about me. And um, for me to then go, I'm not okay with this anymore. So yeah, that's been a very difficult journey over the last 5 or 6 years.
So in the chat, Cobalt has said anxiety isn't rational. Yeah, for sure. Sabyasachi says, sorry you've had to go through such pain, Betty. Penny says, yowza, that statement just hit me in the gut. And it's nice that you are actually, you know, taking these steps forward. So between your diagnosis and the moment in, you know, that next relationship that you realized, holy fudge balls, I am trying to avoid rejection. How long was that for you to like, until you like were just dialed in, oh, this is very rejection sensitive?
Honestly, it wasn't the next relationship where I realized that. The next relationship, I mean, I ended it, but that was purely out of like just sheer frustration, just like sheer frustration. Just like I finally stood up for myself and said, you know what? No, like this is not going to happen. So I was single after that for about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. And I am an extrovert by nature. I get my energy from being around people. And I was living by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I was single and I was lonely. Oh my God, it was awful. I was so lonely. And I was like, I just need to go home. Like, I don't like this anymore. Like, why did I move down here? Oh my God. But then I stayed involved in my community and I was meeting people and I was leading things and I was traveling and I was still seeing my people back in North Carolina. And so then I met somebody and I got into a relationship, that was another poly relationship. But in this poly relationship, I was not the primary relationship. I started dating someone who was married. And then eventually I started dating their spouse as well. So it was all three of us in a triad situation. And that relationship was the point where I started going to therapy again. One of my partners was like, you might benefit from maybe seeing a therapist. And I was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. I had one in college, had one when I was younger, probably a good idea because I don't know how to deal with this anxiety. This is like driving me nuts. So I started seeing a therapist and I started talking about just my life and the things that you do with a new therapist. And he pinpointed pretty quickly that one of my sticking points or one of my challenges was my self-worth. And that comes from a lifetime of trauma, childhood abuse, trauma in relationships and things like that. And so he pinpointed pretty early that I had an extremely low opinion of my own self-worth, that if I wasn't actively contributing something concrete to my relationships or to the people around me, that I wasn't worth spending time with. I wasn't worth, people's energy or people's love or what have you. And so when I would work myself to the bone because I figured if I'm not contributing, then that's the end. They will reject me because I'm no longer useful to them. And their love is conditional on what they get from me. And as soon as they stop getting what they want, they'll leave me alone. And so that made me actively not make waves. Like I would talk to my therapist and say, this happened this weekend and it really bothered me because of this and that. And I really want this in my relationship and I don't understand what's happening. And he would say, well, have you said that to them? I'd be like, no. Betty doesn't ask for things. Betty takes exactly what she's given because that's what she gets. And he was like, what? Are you serious right now? I was like, well, yeah, isn't that what you do? Like you just are happy with what you get. And he was like, no, no,
dear.
This is not how we play this game. No. So he was the one that started me on that ask for it. Just say something. You never know if you don't ask. The answer is always no if you don't ask. And so I had to fight my own anxiety. I would have panic attacks. I felt so bad because I'd be at their house, just spending the weekend, like having a weekend, and there would be something on my brain that I wanted to talk about, something that had happened in the week before, whatever. And we need to talk about this. And I would have panic attacks at their house, and they would have no idea why. They'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is happening? Nothing has happened today. Everything's been fine. Like, everybody's been laughing and smiling. What is with the panic? And it would be because I was trying to prepare myself to have a conversation about, look, I need more of this from you, or I need less of this from you, or blah, 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 blah. But I started having those conversations, and some of the conversations went really well. Some of the conversations, not so much, it was sort of a give and take. And so some of the practice that I was putting in, some of the I need to say this, gave me the practice of I can say this and it's not the end of the relationship. Like, just because I bring up a problem doesn't mean that's going to be the end of the relationship. It just means there's a problem and we need to talk about it. And sometimes I would get what I asked for, and sometimes the answer would be, sorry, that's not going to happen. And then I would get to decide, am I okay with that answer? But I had never.
Can I stop you there, right there? Because I think that's really, really an important point, right? You can ask for something, and the asking is not the end of the relationship. And people, when you ask for something, you might get a yes, you might get a no can do, you might get a let's talk a little further about this and collaborate and see where we can, make things work. You get to decide at that point what you're going to do with that response. Now, you and I were talking earlier about like the boundaries versus ethics. And that's like a huge key. So I have these boundaries. I need to be able to speak them. I really don't appreciate when you do this. Could you please stop doing this? Right? And they say, oh, shit, I didn't know. Sorry about that. Absolutely will stop. Okay. No decisions really need to be made there because that was fucking awesome, right? Or they say, I don't know if I can stop doing that. That's an intrinsic part of who I am. Let's talk this out a little bit more. And you say, okay, you know what? They're putting forth the effort. We're going to talk it out. Or they say, no, I can't stop that. That is me. I do these things and I don't even do them consciously. And then you get to say, well, heck, is it a boundary for me if they're doing it that way? Or is it a boundary for me if they're doing it personally at me, right? So you get to take control of the situation by speaking up and then making the decision. And that's a huge key because you're giving people both the chance to honor your request, and you're also allowing them to say no if they need to, and then make your own decision from it. So when we're talking about boundaries, I think that that's a huge key because a lot of people think, oh, I set a boundary and then that's that. But we're humans, individual humans in autonomous relationships. And we have to realize that a big part of ethics, treating people as they need to be treated, is treating them as individual humans who can say no.
Yep.
Right? And that's hard if you have anxiety. It's hard if you don't have anxiety. It's hard if you have anxiety, harder. But it needs to be said. You get to make this decision. And that, I think, is also a part of, I don't know for you, Betty, do you feel like with your rejection sensitivity, prior to like doing the work, did you feel like almost powerless to like with the way your relationships like they like me or they don't like me. My only power is to keep doing the things.
That, I don't know that I've ever described it that way, but that's pretty accurate. Like, I didn't, up to the time when I started doing the self-work, I believed that if somebody liked me, it's because I did something they enjoyed. Usually that had to do with what was in the bedroom. It was because I had a skill they enjoyed. And so they wanted to keep me around. So they would do all the other stuff that you're supposed to do so that they could get this thing that they wanted, right? And so it became very difficult for me to accept compliments, to accept genuine shows of affection, because I always believed that would not exist if I didn't have this one thing that they wanted.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it was very extrinsic control. Like, I did not have any control over the trajectory of the relationship, the boundaries that were being set inside the relationship, with the exception of, the big obvious ones that we talk about, like consent and things like that. But even in some of my relationships prior in my life, that wasn't a thing either, right? Like, my consent was regularly violated in relationships I've had before, and I didn't know what to do about it. I was like, well, I mean, I guess that's just what's happening now, and I guess this is just what it is. So part of it is maturity, part of it is getting burned enough and getting, my heart broken and being alone and realizing that I can be alone and be okay, that I can be on my own and be okay. And those, I think, are lessons some people only learn with time and with life experience. I don't think there's a way for some people to learn. There wouldn't have been a way for me to learn that lesson unless I lived by myself, was forced to be by myself, with myself all the time. That was hard for me. It was very difficult for me. It was just me and my demons in my house all the time. And we got to be real good buddies. We would make like chips and dip and watch movies. It was awesome. Me and my demons, we would hang out. So as I did my self-work and I started looking at, and at first it was very extrinsic. It was another person telling me, you are allowed. It really took an outside person to tell me, you are allowed to say that's not okay.
That's a huge key. That's a huge key. And that's one of the things that we work on in the Take No Shit workshop. So for those of you who are in Take No Shit, this is a direct example, a perfect example of somebody giving Betty a law. This is what you are allowed to do. This is what you do in this situation. Now, Betty, I'm guessing moving forward as you've done the self-work, you are now able to create what I call rules for yourself, right? This is what I'm going to do in this situation. And you don't have to go to that external party. But at first, some people are going to work best with, what do I do? Tell me. Okay, here's what you do. You pause, you breathe, and then you say, I need to excuse myself from this situation right now. I am not in a headspace to talk about this. I'm going to leave and I will get back in touch with you in the next 24 hours once I've cleared my head, or whatever it is. Like that is a law. And you say, okay, I can do that because so-and-so, who I trust deeply and who has my best interests at heart, told me to.
Yes.
Couldn't necessarily do it for myself, but I could do it for so-and-so because so-and-so knows their shit.
Yeah. And believe it or not, in those months where I was learning those lessons and I was hearing that, when I would need to do that, I would tell my partners, my therapist said, I need to blah.
Have somebody you can blame.
So, well, and for them, for me personally, it was a I'm doing this because the person who I am working with my mental health on tells me I need to do this.
Yeah.
And the sort of the hidden message behind that is I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. Right? So
Oh, absolutely.
then it becomes I'm doing this because I've been told it's what's in my best interest. And that gives them a heads up of, so this is coming from some mental health self work. Okay. All right. And I think it
Yeah.
gives them the opportunity to understand that I'm not saying this because I'm being a brat. I'm not saying this because I'm being clingy or needy or bitchy or I just want to complain about some shit. Like, I'm coming from a space of I feel overwhelmed and I need to get this out and I need to say this. And I am so uncomfortable with this right now, but my therapist told me I have to. So this is what we're going to do.
Right. And that gave you the chance to practice the healthy behaviors in an officially approved,
sanctioned way. Yes.
A sanctioned way. Yes. Yes. Okay. So Penny had a question for you. How do you get past the part of your brain that says, well, I started with these clear expectations and now I'm changing that? I tend to just self-sacrifice because that change in desire is on me and I feel like I just have to deal without.
Ooh, good question. So I read that question and it immediately started this like memory in my brain. So there was a time in that relationship with that married couple where NRE is a completely like immersive state that you get in, right? But for me, there are certain expectations that get set up at the beginning of a relationship that if those behaviors are going to change, I need to know that, right? Because the way you relate to me from the start of us hanging out, doing whatever we're doing is what I'm expecting from you. And one of the things that happened is when we started, when the original partner and I started dating, we were texting all day, every day, like every day, and multiple times a day. And like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Oh, I just had lunch. Oh, great. What'd you have? Da, da, da. Just like the stupid, benign, like want to poke your eyeballs out kind of conversations. But I loved it because it was connection all day. I felt like I knew what was going on and he was interested in my life. Well, a year later, I would talk to him once a day. No good morning text, no, hey, how you doing? No, nothing. It was one video call at the end of a night with all three of us on the phone call. So like there was no individual conversation happening between me and my, and so that was a change in behavior that was not communicated to me. Like nobody told me that was going to happen. And so when I brought it up and said, I need more than this. Like, this is not enough for me. One, having that conversation was, because I kind of knew what the answer was going to be. And the answer was, well, this is just how I am. Like, and I said, but this isn't how you were when we started. And the answer was, oh, you didn't really expect me to keep that up, did you? Like, that was just NRE stuff. Like, that's just, I mean, that's to be expected at the beginning. And I was just like, what? So, turning that around, like for me, if I have a change in boundary or a change in expectation, and I realize it as we get into the relationship, I will sit down and communicate that. I will say, hey, we need to have a conversation. And I'm not one of those people that will send people a random text like, hey, we need to talk, and then just leave it at that. I'm like, when we get together this weekend, I would like to sit down at some point this weekend and have a conversation. And usually if they ask, I'll give them the topic. Like, yes, I would like to talk about this particular behavior or about this particular expectation. And usually the way I get my anxiety to is I make notes for myself. So I'm like, I want to talk about this because this, and I want to talk about that because this. And it all revolves around me. And for a long time, I hated that because it felt very selfish. Me, 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 me. But I realized if I start with you statements, people feel attacked and they get defensive.
Right.
And it's like, you, why I oughta, right? And so it would be, I experience this when this happens.
Yes.
And
Right.
I don't want to experience this anymore. And so, yeah, I do everything that I can to quiet the anxiety down, but please trust me when I say there is a bullhorn in the back of my brain that is screaming at me, shut up. They're going to walk away. If you don't shut up right now, you don't matter. Your needs don't matter. They don't give a shit what you think. You just need to shut up and take it, because that's what this is about. Like, that is literally happening while I'm having this conversation. And it gets so loud that I sometimes will have to be like, can you give me like 10 seconds? And I will just sit and close my eyes, and I'm like in the front of my brain screaming, will you just shut up? I'm trying to have a conversation here, right? So how do I do it? I just do it. I just make myself do it. If it's that important to me and it's something that I really am not willing to put up with anymore, then I do it. Now, do I do that the first time this thing happens? Oh, hell no. No. This
Not
conversation,
Not there yet.
because I have to know if, one, this was a fluke, or if this is the beginning of a pattern. And two,
Right.
if I can, before I have this, big conversation, can I redirect this behavior on my own without explicitly stating that I'm not okay with this thing? Can I redirect it naturally so that it's not a problem? So usually when I finally say I need to have a conversation, whatever I'm talking to you about has been going on for a good 2-3 months, if not longer. Like, I have been sitting on it going, am I okay with this? Am I really okay with this? Am I just hormonal right now? Am I having a depression flare up? Like, there are so many questions that I ask myself before I ever approach anybody else, because I need to be sure my anxiety needs to be sure that when I bring this up, if it goes badly, that it was, yes, that it was going to go that way no matter what.
So, a couple of things. Sabyasachi asked, has the anxiety made it difficult for communicating your preferences? Obviously, yes. And I want to point out something that, again, I don't really have anxiety. I've not been diagnosed with it. In fact, I've been specifically diagnosed without it, because when getting diagnosed with ADHD, one of the first things they look at is anxiety and depression, because those are comorbidities or co-diagnoses that almost always have to be treated first. However, I do something very similar to what you do, in the sense that when something bothers me, my brain goes ding, and hey, that bothers me, make a note, right? So I make a note, and then I come back to it a little bit later, and I go through a checklist very similar to what you went through. Do I feel this? Do I feel that? How about this? How about that? Could I be this? Could I be that? But, and I'm giving y'all who are, here live or watching this replay, I'm giving y'all a contrasting way of doing it. Now, Betty just said, by the time I talk about this, it's been months. And I'm saying that within a day or so, I will usually say something sort of offhand to my partner, like, hey, yesterday you said something like and it made me a little uncomfortable. I'm not quite sure why yet. And if it ends up being something, I'm going to get back to you about it. But I just wanted to let you know so that I'm not like pouncing on you about it later. And then if maybe you do something similar another time, I'll be able to relate it back to this, right? So for me, in setting healthy and strong boundaries around my relationship, you know, those books out there that's like, don't sweat the small stuff and it's all small stuff. I'm like, no, I fucking sweat the small stuff. I sweat the teeniest, tiniest things. And I tell them so that they can calibrate themselves as they desire to me. An example, and then we'll move on with you know, some additional questions and so on. And I've given this example before in these Take No Shit workshops and in other boundaries things. I'm in the middle of double mastectomy and reconstruction. And prior to all this, my partner and I were in the car. We were going to see a movie, and I was talking to him about, okay, so you know, during my convalescence, blah, 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 blah. And he pauses for a second. He says, I don't like that word. And I said, what? Convalescence? He's like, yeah, I don't like it. It sounds sad or bad or wrong or something. He said something like that. And I'm like, okay, sure. Didn't know that. Won't use it again. What word would you like me to use? And I'm like, recovery? He's like, yeah, I like that one better. Okay, done and dusted, right? In our relationship, we have taught each other to set itty bitty tiny boundaries, no matter how like silly or whatever they might seem, because that keeps them from getting big. The key though, and there's two keys here. One, we are also not working with anxiety, although I think that even with anxiety, I tend to say, as much as possible, see if you can work on itty bitty tiny little things and setting them, the lower pressure stuff, right? And, you know, for those in my workshop, start with the things that aren't a big pressure, right? Like, no, I won't eat those radishes or whatever it is. And two, in a relationship, it takes two people willing to collaborate and look for and honor each other's boundaries, right? Like, so asking for them and wanting them and saying, thank you for telling me so that I can make your life with me less anxious, less frustrating, less, oh gosh, that just really annoys me, right? Mm-hmm. So that our lives together are the best they can be for both of us.
Yes.
Right. So that's a big part of what we were actually just talking about earlier, which is choosing the right partners and then setting things up so that both of you are collaborating on building a safe space for your connection, your boundaries, and so on. So, yeah. Penny says, oh, that's helpful. I'm writing that down. I experience this. Right. Mm-hmm. Penny also says, yep, that's me right there. Probably because I'm an emotional runner. I just assume they are over there going, run for your life. Yep. Cobalt says, trying to be prepared for worst case scenario. Yep. Penny, yowza, within a day or so. Yep. That set off my anxiety, eyeballs bulging and all. So, you know, but here's the thing. I mean, one thing you have to understand about my partner and I is, you know, we've been together for nearly 10 years now. Also, and this is a huge key, when we came together, one of the first major conversations we had was literally, we want the dream relationship with all the sex and all the fun and all the kink, and we want the best we can have, or we're not doing this. And actually, that was, for me, that was hugely anxiety producing, because like, I just had this awful marriage, and then I'd had 5 years of and I really liked this guy. Yeah. And I really, really, like, there was a part of me that was like, gimme, give me. I want. But I laid it on the table and he was like, yeah, okay. I can buy into that. You can't hear me? Oh, hold on. Let's see. Huh. Can you hear me now? Anyone? Okay, awesome. So I said to him, I'm like, hey, look, I'm liking you. We're starting to think about doing the things. I want it all. Like, I want to be completely open. I want to be completely honest. I want to be able to tell you anything and have you tell me anything. And we work through it together and we make this the best relationship either one of us could have ever imagined. And he was like, yeah, okay. I'm willing to try that.
So actually, funny enough, for me, the longer we've been together and the more emotionally invested I am in the relationship, the less I'm willing to bring up bad shit. Because for me, I've got so much invested. I've got time. I've got shared space. I've got shared plans. I've got, like, we have a vacation that we've planned and paid for in 6 months. You know, if I bring up this bad thing right now and we break up, what happens to the deposit on that vacation we've planned 6 months from now? Right?
I get that.
The longer I'm with someone, the less likely I am to bring up, or the more anxiety it gives me when I need to bring up bad shit. However, the longer I'm with someone, the less it's little shit. The less it's, because normally my emotional investment comes with the give and the take and the, oh God, that just, why do you click like that when you watch a movie? You're driving me nuts. Knock it off, you know? Or, you know, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I hate mushrooms. Can you please stop putting mushrooms on my pizza? I would really appreciate that. Like those little things I can navigate no problem because it's personal preference. It's just like, I don't like mushrooms. I'm not going to eat them. Or like people who like to click pens. I'm like, I'm gonna throw something at you. And I can usually make it funny and I can usually make it a joke, but they get it. They're like, okay, and not clicking any pens around you anymore. All right, you. But so when it comes to getting anxiety around a difficult conversation, it's because it's a big conversation. Like I'm talking about communication styles, or I'm talking about a need of mine that is not being met. And when you're 6 months, a year and a half into a relationship, and now all of a sudden you're bringing up the fact that you've got a need that's not being met, like that can come with a lot of, well, what do you mean? I do this and I do this and I do this, and there's this defensive and there's this, I thought everything was fine and you haven't said anything. And but it also has to do with, because my anxiety is rejection sensitive, I am hyper vigilant in a relationship, and I pay attention to everything. Everything. Okay. Like I'm talking, let me give you an example. So I was spending every weekend with my partners at their house, to the point that I had a drawer for clothes that I wore at their house because I was there so often. My stuff was in their bathroom. You know, my extra toothbrush and hairbrush and whatever was at their house. So I went over there one afternoon because one of them was sick and in bed and the other one was at work, and I had a moment to go check in on them. So I went to check on my partner, make sure he had what he needed and he had some soup and some medicine, whatever. And I happened to go in the bathroom while I was there, and I realized my stuff wasn't on the counter anymore. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody had given me a heads up. I just walked in and realized my toothbrush, my hairbrush, my deodorant were not on the counter anymore, and I couldn't find them. Ooh, immediately. Wow. I'm talking immediately. My brain was like, yep, they're breaking up with you. They've already packed your shit. When you get here on Friday, they're going to hand you your bag and go, this was nice. You have a good day. Bye. And that was it. And immediately my brain went into, this is a disaster, where they're breaking up with me and they just haven't found the courage to tell me yet. And he's sick in bed, so he's definitely not going to say anything. And she's at work and da 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 da. And I went into a spiral that almost turned into a panic attack. And so that hypervigilance will make mountains out of molehills for me. And I have to talk myself back, which is why I don't bring stuff up immediately, because I have to check in with myself and be like, am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Is this actually something that is real? Or is my brain making this up? And so what I did in that situation is I just texted my other partner who wasn't there and said, hey, I noticed my stuff isn't on the bathroom counter anymore. Did you need me to keep it somewhere different? Is it in your way? Blah, blah, blah. And she texted me back. She was like, oh, no, me and the kids were dyeing their hair in there this weekend, and we just didn't want to get hair dye all over your stuff. So we just stuck it in the drawer. I was going to take it out when you got there on Friday. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Like, that was the answer I needed. And I was perfectly fine, because I had a reason that made sense why my stuff was missing. Funny part about that is her anxiety kicked in at that point. And then she came to me and was like, why did you have to text me about that? Were you really worried that we were going to break up with you and not say anything to you? And I mean, it just, woo, like, having anxiety and being in a relationship with somebody who has anxiety, that's a whole nother bag of weasels that we don't even need to go there. But yeah, so holding on to that hypervigilance and, you know, understanding that sometimes you just need to ask a clarifying question to make the bullhorn quiet down. Is also a way for me to be able to check in on my own boundaries. Like, it would have been an issue for me if it had come back with, I just didn't feel like seeing it on the counter anymore. That would have been an issue for me. You know, like, that would have been okay, then we need to talk about this. That would have bumped up against a boundary for me, which is, I need to have space in your life. So yeah, it's a constant push and pull between, is this actually something that's real, or is my brain making this up? And, you know, is this something that I really do need to talk about? Megan just popped up in the chat and said, being hypervigilant is exhausting. Noticing small changes in messaging, tone of voice, watching how they act around you in public. And that's exactly true. It is absolutely exhausting to be so hypervigilant. And the
challenge is that's always filtered.
I can't hear you.
Oh, geez, Louise.
They might be
Can
able
you hear
to,
me
but
now?
I can't. Yes. Okay.
The challenge from my perspective is that is always filtered through your greatest insecurities and fears. Always, right? Like, there's no way around that. Lizette from Australia asked, how do you handle relationships that don't respect boundaries set when they are family in regards to anxiety?
So I have one of those. And in all honesty, I don't know that I have a definitive, this is what you will do, this is what you won't do kind of answer, but I can tell you what I have done. So, my father, in a lot of ways, is a very complicated relationship for me. And so there have been several times in my life where I've gone completely no contact with my father. No phone calls, no letters, no visits, no nothing. And then eventually we would get back in touch with each other. But every time we got back in touch, he realized, I think, that his continued behavior was risking his relationship with me. And so through the years, I have lessened the communication that I have with him to once a month, once every other month. And even then, there will be things that come up in conversation, like when the pandemic started. First time I talked to my father after the shutdowns happened, he said some very xenophobic, racist comments about, the virus and where it came from and how it got here. And I was on the phone with him and I said, "Are you serious right now? Like, do you want to go down the epidemiology, rabbit hole with me? Because we can go there. I have 2 college degrees. We can have this conversation if you want to, but I don't think you want to, because I'm gonna make you feel stupid." Okay. And so I am able to pull that out and say, I'm not going to have this conversation like this with you. I will be more than happy to share factual information with you, but I'm not going to entertain comments like that. And then I just shut it down. And if he has nothing else to say, okay, well, it was nice talking to you. Bye. And if he wants to change the subject, we'll change the subject. But I have stopped entertaining conversations like that. I'm sorry, I will not have this conversation with you. And it's hard, but just literally saying that with no emotion, it's called gray rocking. I'm sorry, I will not have a conversation about that. And if they keep trying, I'm sorry, I will not have a conversation about that. And then the more they try, then you start saying, if you continue to try to have this conversation with me, I'm going to hang up. I'm done having this conversation. And just saying it as often as you can stand. And then if they won't stop you, hang up the phone. There's a little red button for a reason. Hang up.
So Penny says, I was on the receiving end of my nesting partner telling me 8 years in that he'd held back on certain things. And I asked him, don't you resent me then? So from that perspective, I understand it's important for everyone to be able to express our needs and boundaries. And I think that that's pretty key, is that, again, if we're looking at the 2 sides of the coin, the boundaries where we're thinking, oh my gosh, this is where we're stopping people, right? But we also look at the ethics and we say, this is where we invite people to set their own boundaries with us, right? And so when you're going into a relationship, and let me be very clear, because we've just talked about family, and we've just talked about a partner of 8 years and my partner of 10 years. It is easier to start a relationship, both of you focusing in on boundaries are important to us, and having that conversation and negotiating, than it is to try to come back and add them in. It's not impossible, but it is more difficult when you already have patterns of behavior and expectations of silence, or or when you've trained them, and this has happened with people I know, when you've trained them that you only really need to be paid attention to when you yell. Right? So, which is one of the reasons that I try very hard to say, hey, this thing happened, not sure how I feel about it, or I really don't like that, and not raise my voice. And test them early in the relationship to see if they pay attention without me getting hysterical. Because if it takes me yelling at somebody to get my point across, that's an untenable relationship for me. I will not have that relationship. If I fight with my partner like more than a couple of times a year, 2 or 3 times a year, I'm done. I am not here for that. I am not having that kind of extra dramatic in my life. I have a community that's full of drama. I do not need that in my home.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So,
and there are people around me that remind me that my home, my space, is my peace. Like, this is the one place in the entire world that and I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, that I should feel safe. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like the word should, because there's a lot that goes into that, but still, this is the one place that I'm safe and I'm peaceful. So I had a situation happen. I just met this guy on internet dating. Okay. It's horror stories, but whatever. So I just met this guy on internet dating, right? And he came over to my house once, and we hung out. We had a good time, watched some Netflix, did some sexy stuff. It's fine, whatever. So then The next time he came to my house, the next time he knocked on my door, he was drunk and angry.
Oh, wow.
And that moment where I opened my door to a drunk, angry man, wasn't angry at me. He was angry at a situation that had happened, and he'd gotten drunk because he was mad and decided coming to my house was a good idea. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was fight or flight. I don't know what happened, but a switch clicked in me in that moment when he sat on my couch, drunk as a skunk, telling me the story about what had happened that had pissed him off, and he was clenching his fists like he wanted to hit something. And I went, you need to get out of my house. I will be more than happy to call you an Uber and pay for it myself, but I need you out of my house now. He was like, why? I didn't do anything. I was like, I'm not even going to give you the chance. I need you out of my house. And I realized in that moment, that is an absolute boundary for me. Drunk and angry does not happen in my world. I don't care who you are. If you are my best friend, my mother, my sister, I don't care. Drunk and angry does not happen in my world, because drunk and angry leads to violent in my head. And I'm not even going to give you the chance to go there. So drunk and angry, goodbye. Get out of my house. And I was so proud of myself in that moment because I felt zero anxiety about it. There was no like, oh my God, is this okay? Am I allowed? It was just get out of my house. I don't care how. Please don't drive because you might hurt somebody, but get out of my house. And I was like, okay, apparently when I feel like my safety is at risk, the anxiety just goes away. Like my actual safety, the anxiety does not play a part in my decision-making process because I want you out of my house like now.
Right.
So having those experiences that aren't planned, I had no way to plan for that. I didn't even know that was going to happen, but it did. And that epiphany moment for me is like, oh, I can do that. I can do that all day. And so since then, it has become much easier when I'm talking initially with people, and one of the first questions I bring up when I meet a new person is, what are your deal breakers? And I mean, absolute deal breakers. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't know the answer to that question. And I'm like, I have several. One of them is drunk and angry. Second is raising your voice at me. If you feel like you need to yell at me to get your point across, we are not going to do well together at all, because I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to get pissed off and hit you, or I am going to be cowering in the corner of the couch because I think you're going to hit me. Okay? Neither one of those is a good situation. Let's just not do that. But all of these things I've learned through my self-work with my therapist and through trial and error. Honestly, I probably have more relationship experience than most people half my age, because I have been in so many relationships in my life, at so many different types of relationships with different people and different personality types and different relationship structures, that I can just at this point, I can say, I will not do this, that, or this. But the recent situation that came up, that actually made me post that status on Facebook, it was a guy that I just recently met on online dating. You would think I would learn my lesson, but apparently I don't. So
hope springs eternal.
It does, apparently. So anyway, I was talking to this guy, and I went and visited with him at his house, and he made some really like narrow-minded comments about gender. And I said so to his face. I said, I don't know where you got that from, but that's extremely narrow-minded. And so, I left, and I didn't really like think about contacting him again or whatever. But he texted me, and he was like, I kind of feel like we really vibed well, and I kind of want to like hang out, and I'm going to be at work, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, okay, I thought in my head, maybe he just didn't know what he was saying. We can talk about that at a later date, whatever. And I said, well, maybe you'd like to come hang out at my house this time. And he brought up that I mentioned his comments were narrow-minded. And so I said, well, they were. I'm not saying you are a narrow-minded person. I'm simply saying your comments about gender were very narrow-minded. To which he got into a nasty, petty argument with me over text message that lasted like half an hour, where he was like, well, I think you just say a lot of stuff and don't really mean anything. And I think that's empty-headed. And I was like, really? So we're just going to be petty? Nah, I'm good. And like my anxiety was in my throat this whole time, like having this text message argument with this guy back and forth. I was like, I can't breathe right now. Why is this guy arguing with me? Like, what is happening right now? And here I am just trying to explain my point of view, and he's calling me empty-headed and petty, and what is happening? And finally I was like, you know what? If that's really how you feel, then this is not going to work out. You have a nice day, and click. And I didn't feel good after that conversation. I still had high anxiety after that. I was still like playing this conversation over and over and over in my head. Like, could I have said something different? Did I say something wrong? Like, what else could I have done? Da, da, da. But then when I got home that night and I realized that I'm never going to have to take that guy around my friends and have to excuse his behavior to my friends, I was like, yes, I can do this.
High five.
Yeah,
There
high five. Good job.
So, you know, what's interesting about that is, to me, that is a perfect example of what I tell people to do. And you did it, well, not on purpose, but still you did it. And that's important. What I tell people to do when you're getting to know people is say no, disagree with them, see how they handle that. And in this case, that guy showed you very clearly that not only would he not accept your boundary and honor your boundary and collaborate with you on it, but he was going to get back in touch with you and start the fight specifically so that he could have his say. Or he was going to start the fight and you were going to capitulate, and he would know exactly how that relationship was going to go. And that is a key for those of you who think, oh, well, you know, I should be nice. And, you know, as we get to know each other, we can work all of these things out later. No. Say no. Stop them. Disagree with them. Turn them down. See how they handle that, and do that over and over and over again. Not to be combative, but to be authentic. And if they cannot handle that, if they are willing to berate you for thinking differently or for challenging their beliefs, now you know, right? Because what you're going to get from people like that is they're going to test you. Did you really mean that? What if I just throw a little bit of negativity your way? Are you going to crumple? Are you going to take that wall down yourself and stomp on it so that I can still be a part of your life? And if so, then they are happy to plow ahead because they know they're going to be able to walk all over you. And that
I had another situation where, and I will tell you the situation, and then I will tell you what my brain did immediately after the situation happened. So I was sitting at someone's house, and they asked me if I'd ever seen The Hangover. And I said, no, I'm not really a big fan of modern comedy. It's just not funny to me. And so he was like, what do you mean? Like, how are you not a fan of modern comedy? And so I gave a short-ish explanation about why I don't like modern comedy movies, but in reality, it's a preference. I don't like those movies. Some people don't like fantasy movies, right? And
I don't like Radish.
He would not let it go. And so he was scrolling through Netflix, and he went to turn The Hangover on. Well, you can just watch it and then tell me what you think. And I looked at him and I said, no, thank you. I do not want to watch this movie. And he goes, I don't understand what your issue is. Like, it's just a movie, blah, blah, blah. And so I looked at him and I said, I don't like modern comedy. As slowly and distinctly as I possibly could, just in case he didn't get the message the first time. So he gets mad at me and says that I'm treating him like a child and that I don't need to talk to him like he's stupid and that I'm being fucking rude. So I was like, okay, then I'm leaving because I'm not going to take up your space if I'm fucking rude. So I left, and on my way home, in my brain, I went, if he's willing to break down my own preferences when it comes to a comedy movie, what's he going to do when I tell him I'm tired or I have a headache or I don't feel like it or I don't want to go to this place or I don't want to meet these people? Like, what is he going to do? And in my brain, literally my brain was going, oh my God, you were so blowing this out of proportion. It was a movie. Like, what is your
No,
problem? Like,
no,
and I,
he was
so
blowing it out of proportion.
so yeah, I talked to my therapist about it. My therapist goes, wow, imagine what would have happened if he wanted to have sex and you said no. And I was like, oh my God, somebody else does think this way. Okay, I'm not being an alarmist. All right, cool. Like, I really had to like convince myself that I had done the right thing in having this argument and ending it with this person, because I'm sorry, if you're not willing to take an easy no, I don't even want to know what you're going to do when it's a hard no.
Exactly that right there. Every single one of you concerned about your boundaries, that when you are meeting new people, boundaries, set your boundaries, hold your boundaries. They are going to say, oh, don't like modern comedies? Yeah, I get that. I mean, like, I don't like some of them either. I think that one's hilarious, but you know what? I'll watch that on a night you're not here. What would you like to watch? Let's collaborate. Do you like John Wick? Because I love John Wick. When they kill his dog, I'm like, oh shit, it's going down. You know, like, okay, we got a thing. We're going to do John Wick. Oh, shit. What the hell?
There you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
every once in a while, there's like a blip and then your audio goes out. It's weird.
So weird. So weird. This is a key, though, for all of you. Understand that one of the things that it's important to realize when it comes to rejection sensitive anxiety is that sometimes you need to take the power of rejection, right? That is your right. That is your power as well. You get to reject them. Uh-oh, we just lost your video, Betty.
I'm back. Sorry.
There you are. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, so was there anything that you tried in creating boundaries that, like, you tried it and you're like, oh, that just does not work for me?
Not really. Not yet. Because I really am very new to this is my boundary and this is what I'm not willing to deal with. Also because a majority of the boundaries that I'm working with right now are like no negotiation boundaries. For example, you don't get to exhibit any of the isms and be a part of my world.
Right.
Period. End of discussion. I don't care who you are. You don't get to exhibit any of the isms, well, with the exception of my dad. That's a long story. And be a part of my world. Right? Because if you exhibit any of the isms, that means I can't take you around my friends. And I can't take you to events with me. And I can't feel comfortable in spaces with you when I've had a hard day because I lost a trans student. And you can't empathize with me about that. Right? So that's a hard limit for me. Like, you know, we want to talk about consensual conversations. That is a hard limit for me. Isms are no-goes.
Big same.
But things like, you know, small boundaries, I haven't had an opportunity to test those because unfortunately, still single. Been single since
I think you're doing a
2020.
pretty good job of testing those. You know, just saying I don't like much.
You bipped again. I know, right?
I think you've had a good chance to test those. Just saying something like, I don't like modern comedy. That's a small boundary.
I mean, yeah. But those, like I said, those are easier when I don't know you as well.
So, of course. And that's exactly what I mean, right? Like, it's easier when you're starting to build the relationship from a perspective of, I honor your boundaries, you honor mine. And if you don't honor mine, bitch, bye.
Well, and I think the other misconception about boundaries a lot of times is that people think it's the big stuff. People think it's don't lie to me, don't cheat on me, you know, don't have partners I don't know about, don't, you know, talk crap about me to your friends. And But boundaries are even the little things, even like, don't leave your dirty laundry on my floor. That's a boundary for me. Okay, that's disgusting. Don't do it. And some people are like, why is that a big deal to me? It's a big deal to me. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it has to be a big deal to you. Maybe it's not. My sister, not a big deal to her at all, right? But she knows when I go visit her house, the room I stay in, free of dirty laundry. Okay. She does that for me because she knows that's a boundary that I need in my life. Um, so the little boundaries are the ones that are unique to your personality. And I had to learn, and I am still learning, that those little quirks of mine make me who I am. And when I
Mm-hmm.
honor those boundaries within myself, I've created a life full of amazing people that love me and honor me for exactly who I am in this
Mm-hmm.
world. And they don't ask me to be different. They don't ask me to change myself. They love me for exactly who I am. They love that I challenge them. They love that I move with them and collaborate with them and build a better world together. And the more peace and happiness that I have in my world because of those people, the more I expect that from new people that come into my world. And my anxiety
That's
can
what I
just
want to
suck
hear.
it.
That, all of that, that is, yes, that's wonderful. Like, I love that. And as you grow in the people who love you and the people who positively reinforce you setting your boundaries, it's going to be that much easier with each new person that you meet because you took that step, because you went to somebody, in your case, it was your therapist, who said, I need you to do this, to take those steps. And you said, okay, I'm going to trust the process. I'm going to do this. And you're like, well, shit, that worked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I
Next.
also love that I get to be that person for other people. I get to be that person
Yes.
that says, you watching this video, you are allowed to say no thank you with no explanation. Put a period at the end of the sentence. I love that I get to be that for other people because I'm not saying I'm an expert. Shit, I'm still figuring this out for myself. I still have panic attacks. It happens. I'm not cured. Okay. But like I said in my post, I realize that the peace that exists in my world is worth 30 minutes of I can't breathe. Why is he yelling at me? What is happening right now? Like, oh my God, 30 minutes. I can do 30 minutes of that. I can do 30 minutes on a treadmill. I can do 30 minutes of anxiety. I wish anxiety burned calories because, boy, I'd be skinny. Telling you what, man, I'd be a supermodel at this point. But it's worth it to me. It's worth it to deal with that minor inconvenience in the middle of my day to know that I can come home to a safe house or go see my friends at coffee or at tacos or at the cigar social this weekend. And I don't have to be embarrassed about who I'm seeing. And I don't have to be embarrassed about who I brought into their space. And oh my God, I'm so sorry he said that to you. Nope, don't have to do that because I don't let those people in my world. And once I find out you're one of those people, there's the door. See you later.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, if people watching this or the replay could leave this discussion with one takeaway, what do you want that to be? Cats have no boundaries. That's there. That's mine. Cats do not recognize others' boundaries. They recognize
No, they
only their own.
yes. I think for me it would be the anxiety is not going to go away. The anxiety is not going to cure itself just because you have good boundaries. What you will do is you will learn how to hold your boundaries and honor your boundaries while still experiencing your anxiety. and it will take practice. And that's okay. You may fuck it up real bad, and that's okay, because you get to try again. Life is not a one and done kind of situation. And if you tried and it did not go well, come back, talk to somebody, reflect on it in yourself, write in your journal, do whatever it is you do, and go back and try again. Because the more you try and the more you succeed, the more you will figure out what works for you and the better you will get at it. Mental health and relationships and living and curating a peaceful, loving, happy life is like playing sports. It takes practice. You're not going to walk on the field your first day ever with a bat in your hand and be Nolan Ryan. This is not going to happen. Okay. So practice, fail, try again, practice, fail, try again until you get it right, and then keep getting it right and get it right again and get it right again. And then finally, you will find that it becomes second nature. Will the anxiety still be there? Yeah, absolutely. But it will be worth it.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, everyone. Let's give Miss Betty a huge round of virtual applause for sharing all these vulnerabilities and tough truths with us, and the process that she's going through right now, and actual steps you can take and experiences that you might have. Betty, before we end, what are you working on, like you personally? What are you working on right now? Like, what's your big passion project?
Ooh,
anything. It could be anything. Learning to cook a souffle. I don't care. What's exciting for you right now?
I feel like such a dork. Do
it.
I can actually show you because it's sitting next to me. So I've really gotten into diamond painting. And so this is the one I'm working on right now, which is Jack and Sally. I've only got like this little corner done right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I've been doing these since like Christmas, and this is such a good like no-brain activity for me, because I need creative no-brain activities, because my brain is on all day, every day. And sometimes just like your computer, it needs to like shut down and sort all the files so you can start back up again. So that's what that does for me. And so this is my fourth one, and I have them hanging around my house so I can see them and be like, look at what I did. It's such a like sense of accomplishment.
Yay.
So, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miss Betty. I am so glad that we were able to connect and bring this to everyone, because I just know, people have questions about this, and I don't have that connection with anxiety that you do. And, you being able to connect your anxiety to actual techniques, and especially, from my perspective, actual techniques that I use, that I teach people in my workshop to say, this is something you can do. Start here, is incredibly valuable, because it allows people to feel like they can do this, even though they have anxiety. I mean, we're humans.
Yes.
We've got shit we got to deal with, right?
Yes.
Thanks to every single one of you for joining us today. This is a special episode of Take No Shit. This replay will only be up for a little bit, and then it's going to be yanked down and thrown into the private archives for the workshop participants. For those of you interested in the workshop, it is a Take No Shit. Yeah, takenoshit.curiouser.life. It's an online at your own pace workshop. It is $47. You can get it for as low as $27 if you name your own price. The price is going up in April, though. So if this is something you think you might be interested in, do it now. It is a lifetime access. Like, you don't have to get it all done in a certain period of time. And it gives you access to the Boundaries book that I'm writing, and you get weekly, mostly weekly events like this, where we talk about specific aspects of building better boundaries and, what it means to our lives. So you can, listen to an hour or so once a week and really get powerful content to help you build that life that Betty was just talking about, like putting in the effort, having those friends, knowing that, those 30 minutes of anxiety that you're going to deal with is worth it to have the life that you want. And I fully support that. If you loved this discussion, please tell everyone you know how awesome Curiouser is and about the Take No Shit workshop, how amazing it is. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you're finding me so you don't miss out on upcoming lives. Mm-hmm. And also, one more thing. Thank you so much for bearing with the technology. Like, I don't know what the heck was happening there, but it happened for a good 15 minutes and we managed to get through it, and yay us. So that's kind of like anxiety, right?
Yes.
We just kept pushing through. We're going to keep trying this until we get it right, and we're going to get the positivity out of it. God damn it. So Thank you all for that as well. Mwah. Bye, y'all.
Bye.